Do I have everybody's attention now?
Welcome to the Wrestling Wrap-Up with Michael and Aaron, where we take the top headlines and most important moments in professional wrestling history, and we examine them right here for you, the fan. It's the Wrestling Wrap-Up with Michael and Aaron, and it begins right now. What's up, everybody? Welcome in on a beautiful, cold Saturday here in Arkansas. I am Michael Carnahan here live for the Wrestling Wrap-Up. Of course, I'll be joined by my co-host Aaron in just a few moments. He's running a little bit behind doing some life happens business, but he will be along here shortly. But today we have a guest that I'm pretty excited to talk about his views on the professional wrestling industry, how he got into the business, and a guy who runs a pretty successful promotion here in the state of Arkansas, South Central Wrestling. Some of you guys may recognize him from some of our other shows, so it's going to be a little bit difficult for me not to call him by his nickname. But with that being said, Mr. Antonio Reyes joining us here. Antonio, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Hey,
Want to apologize to everybody, ladies and gentlemen. I am driving. It's a necessary part of this business to go where the work is.
Absolutely, absolutely. Why don't you tell everybody where you're headed out to today?
Today, I am headed to Paris, Texas to wrestle for Knucklehead Championship Wrestling.
Okay.
Small startup. I got to get gas. Small startup. And I'm just looking to help other promotions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always good to get your name out there as well in different circles. We were just talking about that before we went live here on the air about I told you about somebody that's down there in Texas that you could potentially link up with, but definitely always good to take an opportunity and get your name out there whenever possible.
Yes.
So, like I said, it's going to be hard for me not to call you by your nickname. But, Antonio, talk to us a little bit about breaking into the business. What was that like? I know you've been around for quite some time. What was it like back in your day as far as breaking into the business?
Breaking into the business was a lot different. I started in the late 90s. It wasn't like you could just pull up videos. We didn't have YouTube and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like you could just contact people via Facebook.
Right.
So you really had to get numbers, contact people, get all that stuff in line. The way I happened upon it was we actually had some wrestling that was coming into the Hot Springs area. Okay. They'd got on the radio. We're talking about the event that was coming up, and put out a call that if you were interested, come talk to them at the radio station. So I forget where I was going. I was listening to the radio as I was driving, and I turned around. I made a 90-degree right there and went to talk to these people. Something I had grown up with. Always kind of had an interest in doing, but didn't know anything about it. Okay. So when I saw this as an opportunity, I seized the opportunity.
And by the way, if you guys have any questions for Antonio about SCW or about his career or anything, feel free to comment them in the comments section as we go along here. But talk to me a little bit about...
When we say any questions, I'm not going to hold anything back. You know, usually we try to keep kayfabe and all that. But
Hey,
because of where I'm at and looking at the industry as it is today, I'm tired of trying to keep this um, and talk about my views with the
absolutely, and we're gonna
industry.
get into
So
those. We're gonna get into
definitely,
those today.
I will be breaking kayfabe today.
Oh, absolutely. And we're gonna, me and you actually had this talk a couple nights ago about the thoughts on the current product, and we kind of differ a little bit. So we'll talk about that here in a few. But talk us through what training was like back in the day. I know it's probably a lot different than what you experienced when you were working with my organization, or even what you are currently putting your trainees through.
Yes, back in the day, you couldn't find a wrestling ring all over the place. I mean, they're a lot more prevalent nowadays. There are so many small startup companies that have a wrestling ring that you can get a hold of. So training for me was learning bumps, learning rolls, learning all that stuff um, at Burns Park
Oh wow!
on the ground. We went to the soccer fields at Burns Park.
Oh
So I was
wow!
driving, an hour there, learning how to fall correctly, taking my bumps on the grassy ground. At least it was grass, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But we were told, if you do it correctly here, then you're not going to have a problem doing it in the ring.
Oh, trust me, I remember the first time I ever got ready to do my first spot in professional wrestling, where I would actually have to take a bump. And yeah, that night we went up there to go over bumping. And yeah, that night I hit my head on that canvas so many times. You learn to tuck your chin pretty damn
Yes, you
quick.
do.
Everybody
And
that thinks
exhale.
that's a trampoline, that's some BS, man.
That is not a trampoline. And even though there's padding on it, it's still pretty solid.
Ooh, yeah.
But yes, you learn to exhale as well, because if you ever throw the air out of your chest whenever you hit, it is hard to recover.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So we're talking, and I know definitely from 2013 when I broke in, it's definitely changed as far as that goes. I mean, even today, you look at some of the ways people are brought along, trainees and stuff like that. It's a little bit different nowadays. But talk to me about the state of wrestling when you broke in the 90s. Obviously, you broke in here in a boom time for professional wrestling here in the country with the Monday Night Wars and everything going on during that time. You kind of broke into a boom period for professional wrestling. They always say it's cyclical. It goes through peaks and valleys. But what was when I broke in? There was a commission, and you had to get a license, and you had to go through and prove, that you were trained, et cetera, from the state of Arkansas. Was that around when you broke in?
There was a commission. Now, the commission has never enforced the training, and that's why I have hated the commission. I do respect the commission and wish it was still around because of the promotion side. You've got a lot of people that don't know what they're doing
Right.
as far as promoting a show and getting things together. So I do miss it in that aspect. If they were able to regulate the training, I would be all in favor of having the commission back.
I think the biggest
And
problem.
when all you have to do is fill out a piece of paper and send in money, you're not regulating anything.
That's true, and I think that was the biggest problem I had with the commission was it just seemed like such a money grab. That's all it was to me because you'd hear stories about guys when they'd walk in, they'd automatically demand 20%, I believe, of your door, and then they'd want another percentage as well. It's the state of Arkansas. That's the reason why I'm glad it's gone. I know you don't get into professional wrestling on our level to make money, but it was a little ridiculous to some of the stuff that they were doing whenever they were running professional wrestling here in the state of Arkansas. Especially,
Yes.
like you said, though, I always thought that when I first broke in, until I found out what was going on, I always thought that there was like a test or something, like you would have to be certified because you did have to get this license. And originally, I believe around the time you broke in, or maybe it was 0405, they started the licensing process because a couple of kids in their backyard ran a pro wrestling company, and one of them ended up getting hurt, I believe. Is that the story you've heard as far as the commission starting?
No, the commission has always been around since back in the 60s and 70s.
Okay.
Because they've always wanted to capitalize on the sporting industry. I mean, they were the commission for boxing and wrestling and kickboxing at the time. There wasn't really MMA that was going around. So yeah, I mean, that's always been there.
Absolutely. Well, I don't want to get into
the reason a lot of the states were starting to decommission was because of Vince McMahon.
Right. And I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole, because I kind of want to come back to this whenever we get into the thoughts on the current product subject. Because I want to get into your ideas on like things that have changed since the commission has gone away. We've started being able to promotions have started to be able to blade and things like that. So I definitely want to get into that. Let's get into when you came up with the original idea and the concept for SCW. When was that?
South Central Wrestling. My original look into doing my own promotion was about mid 2000s, 2010, 2011. I wanted something closer to home, honestly. My original thinking was very selfish. I was thinking if I could do a promotion here, then I don't have to travel everywhere to wrestle. So that's whenever I first started coming up with a concept of doing a promotion here, and just really couldn't get legs under it.
So your idea wasn't a lot like for everybody that knows pro wrestling in the state of Arkansas, you'll know this name, but your idea wasn't like the story that Ricky Rowland tells, where he just wanted to bring wrestling back to that old school way it was, the family entertainment, that you could bring your kids to and they wouldn't be offended or anything like that.
My original story was I was just being lazy and didn't want to have to travel to work. In all honesty.
Don't lie, Antonio. You wanted to be a champion. You just wanted to make yourself the champion.
But yeah, I mean, and originally it wasn't going to be South Central Wrestling. Originally, I was thinking Mid-Arc Wrestling.
Okay.
I kind of kicked around Spa City Wrestling for a little bit, but yeah, those were the early days of what the promotion would become.
Okay. When did you hold your first actual event?
My first actual event was November of 2017.
Okay.
After a lot of just kind of pushing it off and growing as a person, really. My spouse had a lot to do with it. I really thank Erica for encouraging me to follow my dream, where others had really shut me down.
Absolutely.
I finally got some legs under it, and it really started with a whole bunch of companies that I had relationships with. The Ohio Club, Mike Dampier there at the Ohio Club, I've known him for a long time. I had talked with him. Larry Wagner at Top Notch Construction, I had talked with him. And I know I'm forgetting some people, and I do apologize, but I had about 4 or 5 companies that told me that they would sponsor an event.
Okay.
So that's what really pushed me to say, okay, yeah, I'm doing this. No matter what, I'm doing this. I had already paid to build the ring, and yes, the ring that we use, I built.
Okay, it's a nice ring for a built one that you
with
built.
with the exception of the 4 posts. Everything else I built myself.
Oh wow. Okay. Look at that skill for everybody out there. This man builds his own rings. Hit him up. But no,
So, yes,
definitely.
I had already built the ring, and I had already reached out to try to train people. Wasn't getting a whole lot of traction with that, but whenever I talked to these business owners and they said that they would sponsor an event, at that point I decided to start reaching out and just getting people that were already trained.
Okay. Who were some of the first, the original stars of SCW back in?
The original stars of SCW, one of the first people I talked to was Ray Ivy, Ray. Met with him. Told him what I was looking for, what I wanted to do, and he introduced me to a whole lot of good guys. David Barrymore, Tabitha Barrymore, Shane came in. I'm trying to think of everybody, but at that time there was Joey. Joey was there. Lee Michaels. A lot of the guys that wrestled at ASWF.
Oh, wow. Lee Michaels.
Connor
Vega.
Connor Vega. He had come in. I actually went and talked to him in Little Rock, and we sat at Popeye's there in Little Rock and talked.
Okay.
But yes, then I started reaching out to people that were LFW, Don Riggins, Leo Keegan, and a few of those guys.
Okay. So you mentioned a name there that I kind of want to go into a little bit. While we're talking about the original idea and the original shows and stuff, your first champion you mentioned there was Leo Keegan. What went into that thought process as far as making Leo, who was still, relatively new on the pro wrestling scene? What was the thought process there whenever you made Leo your first champion?
I'm going to have to slow you down for a minute because I just received a call and ignored it, but it messes with my volume when it does it. So I'm going to have to drop out and come right back in.
Okay, I can do that.
I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do, again, apologize for any of the technical difficulties we may experience. As Antonio said, he is on the road heading to Texas to be able to work tonight and apply his craft there in Texas. Aaron, I do see your question. We will actually get to that and then get back to my question. You said you'll be on soon, and actually, there's Antonio right there. So,
All
Antonio,
right, I apologize about that. There's no way to turn off the calling aspect
without losing the
data
internet.
to be able to be on the broadcast.
Right, exactly. Real quick before we get into my question, Aaron wanted to know, and he said he'll be along soon. He said, while we're talking about your philosophy, what's your philosophy on booking talent? Like, what kind of athletes do you look for specifically?
Specifically, I look for athletes that can work. In all honesty, the things that I ask whenever somebody reaches out to me, or even if I reach out to somebody, I ask for a video of singles matches because I want to see what they can do from beginning to end. People that send me highlight reels, all you're doing is sending me a chunk of something that doesn't tell me about your psychology. People that send me tag matches or 3-ways or 4-ways, that doesn't tell me about what you can do in a ring when the crowd is not really behind you because you've got other action going on. So I look at singles matches so that I can tell how you command the crowd, how well you work, when you can see flubs and stuff that happen, how do you recover, that kind of stuff. That's what I look for.
Right. And I mean, it's very important to note that those things do happen, botches.
I'm not looking for the most built person. I'm not looking for anything specific on heights or weights because I do run 2 divisions for the lighter guys. But But I mean, you look at some of the old champions, Harley Reyes. He wasn't in shape. He wasn't built.
Even
he was
Rick,
just a big guy.
Even Rick wasn't in the best shape.
So no, whenever I'm looking for talent to bring in, I am not looking for the most cut person.
Absolutely, absolutely. So before you got that call, what I was asking you was obviously in the early days of SCW, you had to decide who was going to be your first champion and who was going to carry the banner for SCW. Obviously, a big spot to fill. And you filled it with, like I said, a relative newcomer at that point. He had been in the business for quite some time, but he wasn't exactly a veteran in Leo Keegan. What went through that thought process when you chose Mr. Riggin to be your first SCW champion?
What I was originally looking at was wanting something believable. That's my number one rule, even when I'm training, make it believable. The other thing I was looking at was he is one of the least selfish people that I have ever met.
Absolutely.
He is definitely there to make things look better, not necessarily to get himself over.
Absolutely.
So him being the biggest person that was around and his attitude on the business, he gave 100% every time that I seen him in the ring. And those were the things that went into deciding that he was going to be the person to represent South Central Wrestling.
So I've got to ask, and I made a joke about it earlier, but the old school way of thinking and the old school thought is, who can you trust but yourself to be your top star? What did you ever give yourself serious consideration to hold your first?
I did not. As I was starting to make SCW a reality, like I said, I grew myself, and I came to the conclusion that a promoter that promotes everything for himself is not a good person to work for.
Absolutely. I can certainly
I never wanted South Central Wrestling to be about me. I realized that without the talent that comes in South Central Wrestling,
Absolutely. SCW, obviously, kind of a melting pot of talent. And you mentioned that, the idea for SCW also bore out a training academy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, like I said, I was originally training people to wrestle here. My original thought was I need 16 people. With 16 people, you should be able to run a good show for several events.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wasn't getting home. People would come in, give it a try, and quit or let me know that it wasn't for them.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not for everybody. It really isn't. People want to talk about how it's fake and stuff like that. It is still an athlete's playground.
It really is. It really is. I can't tell you the amount of people that I saw come in once, and the first idea you get of them when they come in is obviously their size, their build, and their personality for me too. As to, the first thought that you get of how they're going to do. And, there's people that I've been pretty damn excited about when I saw them first come in, and I'm like, okay, I can see you here in 6 months doing something with this. And then they just never show up again, and you're just like, oh, man.
Yeah. But one of our commentators, Cleric Baldwin, I originally met him through the school. He'd come in to be trained.
Really?
Wanted to see what it was about. About halfway through day one of training, he apologized to me, said he didn't want to waste my time, but he don't think it's for him. We kept in touch. He still wanted to be involved with the product. So we found something where he was a great fit. Well,
and I mean, I'm going to be completely transparent with you. I'd love to be a pro wrestler, but at the same time, I know that I'm just not built for that type of damage.
Right.
So, that's where I've always admired the Jim Rosses of the world and, the commentators too that were able to help the story along. So that's where I came up with becoming an announcer and, doing what I do for pro wrestling here in the state of Arkansas. So definitely, I can understand the people that, well, maybe it's not for me. You look at it, and some people, and then there's the trainers out there that will just take your money, and they don't expect anything from you. And that's the beautiful thing. We had people up in our training academy. We had a gentleman in our training academy, and that's why I love the values of the group that I usually run with, because eventually they just told him, hey, I don't think that you're a fit for this business. I don't want to take your money. You're more than welcome to keep training, but I don't want to take your money and promise you something that I can't deliver on. And, that's really one thing that I respect. And I know I've heard stories of you doing the same where, if you don't have it, I'm not gonna keep taking your money and filling your head with thoughts.
Right. I'll be honest with you, and we'll make something fit if we've got something that will fit. But yeah, there's no sense in just pandering to people, giving them false hope if you can see that something's not going to happen.
Absolutely. So we're a few years in now. We're what, 17 to 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. We're 4 years in, roughly, to the run of SCW. Who are some of the breakout stars that people need to be paying attention to at SCW?
I've trained. I started training with a few different people, and Troy Twain, James Troy, he is one of the first ones that he's there every week. He does everything he can to the best of his ability. And he has just pushed and pushed and pushed. And he is so technical with everything that the only thing that he seems to be failing is his self-confidence once he gets in the ring. He listens to the veterans in the ring, which isn't always a great idea.
Very true.
Sometimes you have a veteran that just wants to look like the monster and the biggest person and show out for people that he brings to the show. And when you're putting together matches that don't make sense or that are really lopsided, even though you know that you're supposed to be putting the other guy over, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Absolutely.
And I've got to get James to know when to say, no, we're not going to do that.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about James, just watching his evolution. Since I first met the young man when he started with this everyday challenger gimmick, it was one of those things where you've seen him evolve, especially within the last 6 months. I've got to give the kid a lot of credit. Within the last 6 months, that guy has come and he's kicked it into another gear. And we actually have him coming up on this network. We'll be doing the live stream of the AWO Anniversary 2 event, and he'll be on that card. So definitely that's a guy I encourage everybody to keep an eye on. The guy can do phenomenal stuff in the ring. Like you said, it just seems like a disconnect within his mind as far as confidence goes. But, I mean, he's a hell of a talent for sure.
Yes, and he definitely needs to work on his promo skills. A lot of times I will look at the promos that he does and I'll ask him what's going on. He's like, well, I thought this and this. And I'm like, well, you're saying that and that, but I don't believe you.
Right.
If you can't make me believe what you're saying, how am I supposed to get behind you?
Well, and that's what it's all about. It's about talking people into the building.
Yes.
If you can't make somebody believe, you can't make them separate with their hard-earned money by any stretch of the imagination.
So true. Very true.
So we're talking about we're talking about obviously Troy Twain. Who are some of the others that we can expect to break out from SCW? I know we've seen.
Castle is another one. Kurt Castle is another one that I started training. Brought him up from the start. Brought him into this business. Well, he was seeking me out, but through training, I brought him into the business. He is another one that tries to be very technical with it, and he does a great job. He has the better making for the promos. What I've been fighting with on him is getting his head to wrap around some of the moves that he wants to do that, in my opinion, isn't believable.
Right. Definitely. Well, and I mean, the thing about, when you compare the two, and I've always hated, because, when you're in pro wrestling circles, you obviously compare people, and the comparison has always been with your group, Troy versus Kirk. And I've always hated that comparison, but I mean, we might as well do it while we're talking about him. You look at Kirk, and, the kid's got the physique to go far in this business. He's got got what he can handle. Now it seems like getting the intangibles down, the footwork, the like you said, getting some of the youngness out of them, so to speak, the maturity level.
Well, a lot of it has to do with the way that wrestling is done nowadays. They would find out they're working such and such a person at an event, and they would spend 30 minutes to an hour in the back talking about all the spots they were going to do step by step. And that's been the hardest thing. I never taught him that.
Right.
But for some reason, they picked that up. Both of them did. And trying to tell them that, no, if you just go spot to spot, you're not reading the crowd. You're not reacting to the crowd. And you can tell all of it is rehearsed.
Exactly.
Which is the worst thing for this business.
Well, and I think everybody to a man, we mentioned Ray earlier. Ray will tell you the best thing to do is to go out there and just call everything on the fly. He'll give you a finish, and he'll expect you to basically come up with everything else from there. And he wants you to use the crowd to go
talking out in the ring.
Absolutely. He wants you to know where to begin and where to end, but from there, he wants you to just, go off of what
Feel it out.
Feel it out, exactly. Anybody else we can expect to break out really from SCW as far as, homegrown talent?
Homegrown talent? Not at the moment. I'm still, training people. We've got 6 students right now.
Okay.
But they have just started. They've got their eyes on things, but I've got to get them. I got to get them trained.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to bring up any names there. As far as people that I've brought into the Arkansas area, South Central Wrestling specifically, we got a young kid named Spider. He has come in, and he is phenomenal. There's little things that I've been tweaking here and there on him, so I don't call him my trainee, but he has really helped SCW with what he's bringing.
Well, and that's the beautiful thing about, training in professional wrestling. You never really stop training, so to speak. You are constantly, it's about a constant evolution, and getting back into Kirk, that's another thing I can give him. He has evolved the character that, used to, there was a joke that he was a lot like Roman Reigns in his original inception. And now you see the evolution of his character. And I saw a promo picture of him for a group out of Fayetteville, WCWA. And I mean, he's got the kind of the Baron Corbin-esque, wraparound, and it's pretty cool looking at how he's now taken, and it almost seems like he knows where he wants to go with that character now.
Right. And as far as character building, that was one thing that I talked to him about. When he first brought the tactical vest, that was one of the first things I told him, man, looks like you're Roman Reigns. And then after wearing that a couple of times, he had talked about doing paint on his face. And I said, well, you know, your original incarnation into the business was you were our security guard that accidentally got involved in a match. And then you went with a tactical vest, which could still be looked at as the security aspect. But what does face paint have to do with security guards?
Right. Right. Very true.
So it's always looking at, you know, how does this tie into with who I am? And you're right. He has gone over a lot of different changes, and it has kind of become a joke at times when we talk to each other that, okay, what are you going to do different today? Because, you know, you went tactical vest, and then you went with camouflage pants, and then you went with some face paint, and then you went with, I think he had an ascot at one point. It's like, who are you? What are you trying to be, man?
Well, and I think Kirk is in that spot where he's trying to find exactly what the character is. He visualizes what he wants Kirk Castle to be, but it seems like he hasn't fully developed what Kirk Castle will be yet.
Right, and he's done some looking into his ancestry, and he actually has embraced this Viking part of himself.
Right. That's what I was getting at. Is he's kind of developed his character up there in Fayetteville to a spot where it's very Viking warrior-esque, and it's pretty cool.
Yes, very cool.
Want to welcome in our other host on this show, Aaron. Aaron, how are you doing this week?
Good. How you going?
Hey, it's another day in paradise. You look absolutely exhausted. But we're talking about some of the breakout performers currently at SCW, and we kind of got into Troy Twain, and we may have lost him. He may not have a stable connection there. He's in his car as well. But you know, getting into it, you know, those are two people. I'm gonna give all the credit in the world to Kirk and Troy that they know what they want, and they absolutely, and especially Troy. You know, Troy, like I said, he's a kid that went from he's the other guy that El Reyes trained to now. You know, you almost look at Troy as the guy and Kirk as the other guy. You know what I'm saying? They almost look like they're at equal footing now.
And whenever I would try to get these guys booked, when I would talk to promoters and stuff to let them know that I had trainees that were ready to go, you know, they would see Kirk and jump on that immediately. And I would let them know, because at the time it was true, that I have another trainee. He doesn't look physically as good as Kirk does because he's not tall, but he is more technical. Because at the time he was.
Absolutely. Any thoughts, Aaron, on Troy and Kirk?
Honestly, I haven't. I mean, I've seen a lot more of Kirk than I have Troy. I've seen him a couple of times. I've seen Kirk. I've always liked Kirk. I've always been a fan because he just looks like a badass. He's got the look of a, and he gets in the ring. You believe it. At least I believe it. I believe it.
I'm having a real hard time hearing Aaron.
Turn your volume down a little bit, brother. We can hear the background noise is drowning you out a little bit.
On me?
I'm sitting.
No, on Aaron. Aaron, that's better. That's better. I can hear you now.
I was gonna say I'm sitting in my car with nothing turned on. But no, I've always been a fan of Kirk. He just looks like a badass. But I haven't really seen it. I've seen Troy maybe a couple of times, and I liked what I saw to him too. But Kurt's always, to me, and I've seen a lot more of him in person. So
absolutely,
of those two, I like him. And Troy cut he cut that promo for the AWO show in March, and it was a pretty good little promo video he did. I can't wait to see what he does.
Absolutely. We're all excited to have Troy back. Like I said, especially this last 6 months, being able to sit back and watch the evolution of what Troy has become has just been phenomenal. Because, like you said, you meet Troy and you can tell he's a kid with, the confidence issues and so on and so forth. So just watching him, it seems like now he knows who he is, and you can tell it as far as the character goes. He's almost, I don't even know, is he still running as the everyday challenger, or has he dropped that?
No, he's still running as the everyday challenger, and that was one of the things that I kept imparting on him was, don't just use your catchphrase, which is challenge yourself every day. In your promos, you need to tell people how you're challenging yourself. Point out little things that most people would fail at, and how pushing forward is the challenge. And he's used that.
Absolutely. Well, we'll go ahead and go on to the future of SCW. I know you guys have a card coming up here at the end of the month, the 27th. What can we expect out of the future, man, for South Central Wrestling?
We will see, honestly. We're going to keep pushing the way we're going right now. People have talked to me about traveling, taking the show on the road, but I don't know that that's a fit for us right now.
Right.
I really want to build what we're doing here before I really start stretching out and trying to get in a whole bunch of different places.
Mm-hmm.
I use the gym at Mountain Pine School because it is available to me at a very good price.
Mm-hmm.
So until we are busting at the seams, I don't see the point in trying to get a more expensive building just because it's in the middle of Hot Springs.
Right. Right, absolutely. And, I can be transparent with you. In running with the group I ran with pre-COVID, logistically, a traveling company is a little bit, even though, we're on a smaller level and just running the state of Arkansas, my goodness, it can logistically be a little bit of a nightmare, to move the ring and all that stuff.
Yes.
I know that you guys are bringing in actually some talent I'm very familiar with. I know you're bringing in the Limit Breaker for this show. Talk to us a little bit about bringing in D-Mike, a guy who's got quite a bit of buzz about him. And real quick before you do that, going to bring in another host, Mr. Brad Hicks, going to join us as well for this talk. But real quick, talk us through bringing in the Limit Breaker, D-Mike, for this show.
Well, actually, D-Mike has wrestled for South Central Wrestling before, 2017, 2018. We've had him out before. We went through a patch where a lot of the talent we were using kind of got some separation from, and we started bringing in other talent because that's something that I see at a lot of these independent places is they will bring in the same people over and over and over again. And it's like, once you've seen this person versus this person 50 times, it doesn't seem as special the 51st time.
Right.
So with the independent scene, you have to bring in new faces. You have to take people that you use and put them on the back burner for, it depends on how often you run shows, but you need to put them on the back burner for a little bit of time to give people a chance to miss that they were there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it seems like you've kind of taken that approach a little bit with Kirk, for example. I've noticed that recently, Kirk, you kind of calmed down on him as much, not because you're down on him or anything,
right,
but because, you kind of want to give people time to miss that character being around.
If I constantly shove him down your throat, all you're going to see is him again. So, no, I'd rather pull him back, put some distance in between the times that he appears, so that when he does come back, everybody's ready for it. I honestly think that is one of the things that Hulk Hogan has done that really kept his staying power.
Absolutely.
I've got a two-part question for you, Antonio. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So as a promoter, I wanted to ask you two things. One, I totally agree with you in regards to the talent, because you see a lot of these, especially these bi-monthly promotions and even weekly promotions, bi-weekly, and then weekly productions. You see the same guys over and over, and it's no fault of their own. I find it very difficult to be entertained to some degree when you're seeing wrestler B transition to wrestler D versus C.
Brad, your audio is getting pretty terrible.
Yeah,
I don't know if you're going through a bad spot tonight.
I was trying to listen, and it was in and out. I was going to ask you to translate what he was saying.
So essentially, what he started with was he was asking, that was going to be his first question was what with the talent coming around, but that's about all I picked up on. So hopefully Brad can hop back in here, and when he gets in a better spot, Aaron looks like he may have dropped as well. For the moment, but we talk about this current card coming up on the 27th. Walk us through what we can expect from the card coming up. Oh, here comes
Brad. I definitely wanted to do a rematch with Spider and Troy Twain. Spider had a motorcycle accident about a month before that match in November. Now, a lot of people may not know that. And we're looking at he's saying that Troy Twain may not have gotten that win if he would have been 100%.
Okay.
Definitely we got a new face coming in, Vanish, the Indian warrior. He looks like he's going to make some good waves in the heavyweight division.
Okay. Definitely. Almost it seems like a resurgence as far as the roster aspect with this new show coming up. Saw a lot of new faces on the poster. Definitely something to be excited about, especially if you are in the Hot Springs of Mountain Pine area. Make sure you make your way out there to see that show. Brad, I know you're back. Do you want to try to ask your question again?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're a lot more clear now.
Sorry, I'm currently driving down the freeway, so I'm sure reception was terrible. But what I was going to ask you was, having appeared on your show a couple of times in Mountain Pine with that whole angle that was going on, we followed you guys, and obviously Mountain being a part of several organizations up in Northeast Arkansas, it's more of a regional thing, I would think. As far as the fan base goes, now they love their wrestling, but now I know that you brought in. I wanted to ask you as a promoter, a lot of fans may not have access to the internet or even to see what's going on in the indies. What is the thought process and the setup for bringing like Calico in to try to recoup some of your talent fees for was it show or getting him familiar with the crowd to create the buzz for a guy?
What is the thought process and what? He broke up a few little times.
I believe he said in bringing in Malaco. He was talking about, was it a thought process of trying to recoup some of that talent fee or creating a buzz?
No, I don't know if you're gonna. Can you hear me? Am I coming? What I was saying is obviously it costs talent like that a little bit more than your average talent, local talent. So what is the thought process on building up a character like Malaco to the fans that may have not seen him before? Do you bring him in multiple times, or are you hoping that he can garner some attention since he's pretty big in like Texas and Oklahoma and those areas?
Well, Honestly, I reach out to fans and I ask them, who would you like to see? In fact, I did that, I believe, in January. And based on names that I'm given, I reach out to people and then ask to see videos because I want to see their work firsthand. Just because somebody says, oh, I'd like to see this person doesn't mean that I'm going to put them in the ring. I need to know that they can work. Secondly, is like you were saying, to have them come out a few times. A lot of the times it's a PO issue, a payout. Whenever Anthony Coletti, Slam Shady, first talked with me, he wanted a specific amount, and I actually talked him down because I told him, look, a lot of people don't know who you are here. Let me bring you in a few times. Let them see you. And then whenever we see that they're coming to watch you, then we can go up to that PO you're wanting.
And go ahead, Brad.
I was just going to say, it makes a lot of sense because, it's not like you're bringing in the big guys like the WWE super names that all of us would remember. So I'd always kind of wondered that when I would see guys and be honest with you, the Malico was one of those performers that you were like, man, this guy is amazing. And his promos were good. His in-ring work was good. And so, like I was going to tell people, I don't do wrestling anymore, but if you do get a chance to catch one of SCW shows, be sure to be there because it's a great show. It's a great time. It's a great atmosphere. And Antonio, my hat's off to you for the product that you put out there.
Thank you.
Well, Antonio, go ahead and go into that a little bit. You mentioned, your negotiations with Slam Shady and things like that. Talk us through what, that looks like with people like, a Slam Shady, a Double D, a Magnificent Malico. Talk us through what those negotiations are like. Do they start, where they throw out a high number and lets you negotiate down, or?
That's supposed to be the name of the game. I've noticed that a lot of times I will throw out a number and it either gets taken immediately or I'm told no immediately, and there's no haggling back and forth, which I've thought is always weird. As a promoter, our job is to get the show done as cheap as possible.
Right, absolutely.
As a talent, you want to get as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, being on both sides, I understand both sides. So I expect the haggle no matter what. Mm-hmm. But it really shocks me, the promoters that will either just say yes or no and not even try to talk to you. And I mean, it may sound bad for me to say it like this, but it lets me know who knows what they're doing and who doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
If you get overextended on a card and can't pay your talent or put yourself under, that's not a good fit for you.
Okay.
And if you say yes to anybody, regardless of how they look, and when I say how they look, I mean work-wise in the ring, then you're going to have a product nobody wants to come and see.
Right. Absolutely. I would agree with that statement. So we're talking about, these people being brought into SCW, these bigger names, people that build their name amongst the indie scene here locally. And, one thing that I've always heard the kind of great debate with these bigger names is, do you bring them in and put them over your talent, or do you bring them in and have them put your talent over? What's your philosophy on that? I know you said you prefer to have them in for a story, so.
It depends on what the story is. If they're coming for a one-off, then definitely you want to use them to build your talent up.
Mm-hmm.
That is their purpose for coming there. And as wrestlers, we should all know that.
Right.
I had told people that worked for me in the past that the heel's job is to get the baby over, period.
Absolutely.
So you can't get mad to tell me you want to be a heel and I book you to lose.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. A lot of people, talk about that type of stuff, do you bring these guys in and, acquiesce? So has that ever been a sticking point on negotiations? Has a guy ever came in and said, okay, who am I working with? And then been like, okay, no, there's no way I'm putting them over, and negotiations stalled, or are they usually pretty understanding?
There honestly has not been a single time that I can think of that we had to really go into that.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a single time I've had to talk about that.
Okay.
We come in, I try to be as upfront as possible. Like I said, if they tell me that they're heel and I put a match together, I usually explain what I'm looking at, why I'm doing it this way. So there's not really a whole lot of back and forth. I have had issues, and I'm sorry to call him out like this, but Kirk and I have had issues with how he puts matches together.
Mm-hmm.
He has actually told me, we don't always see eye to eye on everything. There's, 99% of the time we're good, but that 1% of the time comes up a lot.
And then you guys,
but yeah, he'll want to do something, and he'll tell me what he's wanting to do, and I tell him where it makes no sense, and so change it. And then we get to the ring, and he doesn't really change it, or he actually told another talent, that's why I don't tell him anything. I just do it and worry about it later.
Right. And that kind of gets into our next subject. Thoughts on the current product. What's your thoughts on that mindset? Because there are quite a few people, in the wrestling industry that have the mindset, well, I'll just do what I need to do out there in front of the crowd, and then I'll ask for forgiveness later. What's your thoughts on that type of mindset?
Well, in that same vein of speaking, once he told that other talent that, I told that other talent right in front of Kirk, and that's why he's only booked one time in 2021.
Right.
Bottom line, and seems to be something that a lot of people have forgotten, professional wrestling was made to be a fixed fight. Right. Period. It wasn't meant to be a circus show. It wasn't meant to be a trapeze show. It was not made to look like you and the person you're working with in the ring have rehearsed the entire match from beginning to end.
Absolutely.
It is supposed to be a fixed fight, and when a boxer takes a dive, why does nobody talk about the entire fight look fake?
Very true.
Because it didn't. The entire fight didn't look fake. In fact, 9 times out of 10, you couldn't even tell that a boxer took a dive.
Mm-hmm.
Yet you watch wrestling, and it seems like every other spot you can tell they're working together.
Right, exactly. And when we talked about this the other night on the phone, we specifically got into AEW, and you said you only got you didn't even get through the very first match on the very first episode. You didn't get through Cody and Sammy because you thought that, this new style, which is what AEW is built on, this new style of pro wrestling, isn't for you. Talk us through that. What specifically? I mean, I know we talked about how it bothers me when I see people, stop what they're doing and they all gang up and wait for the guy, and they're just watching the guy come in so they can catch him for the suicide dive or what have you. Talk us through what exactly about the current product you think, obviously lends to your ability or inability to suspend your disbelief.
These Canadian destroyers, dumbest thing I've ever seen. Yes. You're telling me that you were flipping so hard that you were taking your body and your opponent's body over that many times? Stuff like that is just unbelievable.
Would you have a bigger problem with it, Antonio, if they didn't do it as much? Because when Petey did it, it felt big. It felt like, ooh. But now everybody does it just as a normal, just a normal going through the motions maneuver.
Yeah, the amount of times could be it too. You know, whenever Shawn Michaels would hit his sweet chin music, that was pretty cool. But then you had the Young Bucks doing like 800 of them in a single match, and the person is still getting up because they got to get to the next spot. That's what I have the problem with. Why did a DDT knock you out in the 80s, but it doesn't really do anything to you today?
Well, Antonio, I've got to ask you. I saw this on TikTok, and I got to wrap this up. The Hulk Hogan leg drop back in the 1980s was like the most devastating thing ever when he performed that move. Can you tell us your thought process on that and how
You're breaking up.
He's asking about the Hogan leg drop and what your thoughts are on that, because it was just an utterly devastating move in the 80s. And I'm thinking he's kind of going through the same thing I'm thinking about with the Canadian, where now it's just, man.
Well, and you got to look at that two ways. I mean, the way you're describing it is one way, but when you look at it in a match, it wasn't necessarily the leg drop that took them down. They were down and out when the leg drop came through. Same as the people's elbow. You know, Rocky would give them the rock bottom, which knocked them out, and the people's elbow was just, you know, the vanilla on top, the whipped cream. Just to rub it in. Like so the people's elbow, the leg drop, wasn't really the finishing move that knocked them out. It was just their signature as, yeah, that was me that did that to you.
Okay. I kind of dig that. I never thought about the because everybody makes fun of the people's elbow just because of, like we are talking about in this section, you know, just how hokey it looks. So definitely, I never thought about it from that aspect. That's actually a pretty cool aspect.
Right, and the whole point behind that isn't that the guy got slammed, you know, like with the rock bottom, but that the way Rocky delivers it makes sure that his head impacts the canvas to give him that concussion state so that he's not able to get up.
Right. So what's your thoughts on, you know, we've been into AEW, and this kind of bleeds into AEW, but it's more so a Japan thing. What's your thoughts on Strong Style, where they just say, fuck believability, we're just going to beat the hell out of each other?
I like Strong Style for that aspect, but like I said, we're breaking kayfabe. Professional wrestling was made to be a fixed fight,
right?
So that you protected each other. You left that ring in as good a shape as when you came in it.
Mm-hmm.
So Strong Style breaks it there, because at the end of the day, we are performing in front of people. We are performing for people. We just don't want it to look like that's all we're doing is performing in front of people.
Right.
We're trying to suspend the disbelief in the aspect of this is supposed to come across as an athletic fight.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, you know, I love Strong Style. I love pro wrestling, period. But, you know, it seems like, and Brad, you can interject if you want to on this, but it seems like that kind of spits in the face of the point of pro wrestling, where, you know, you're giving your body to the person you're working with, your partner, so to speak. And, you know, you're kind of, you guys go out there and just beat the hell out of each other rather than working with each other.
Right. And I can understand snug. I can understand a little bit stiff. But if at the end of the match you know who is winning, which should be the only fake part of wrestling, if at the end of the match you know who's winning, then what was the point of beating your opponent for real?
Well, Antonio, I wanted to ask you. We all know that you are not only a promoter, but you're also a talent as well. And I wanted to ask you, now when I did spots as a manager, I always would ask that they snug up and they stiffen up because it was easier for me to sell something I could feel. What is your preference when you're in a match? Do you like that stiffness, or do you like want them to loosen up?
Good question.
Prefer the stiffness. I really do. You've got to feel the touch. You've got to feel when a move lands. When you're trained, well, when I was trained and when I train people, I tell them you aim for muscle groups. You know, you wanna hit people in the pectoral muscles. You want to hit people in the back muscles. Your forearm muscle on their back muscle can be laid in really good. It can be nice and stiff and not cause injury.
Okay. That was a good question, Brad.
I mean, I agree with you as far as that goes. You know, it's really, I found it difficult to really, unless I could feel a little bit of it, then I knew where to go, with it, because in the heat of the moment, things are happening so quick, your adrenaline's pumping, the crowd's going, the last thing you ever want to do is sell the wrong thing, look ridiculous.
Right.
Right.
But speaking of selling, we were talking about moves, y'all were talking about moves, and the Stone Cold Stunner. What was your opinion of guys like The Rock and other people that would sell the Stone Cold Stunner as if their head had just fallen?
It's a gray area. There are some times that yes, it needs to be sold big, and a lot of that has to be felt through the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
I would rather people sell the Stunner about half as good as The Rock did. I mean, you don't need to flip end over end, but it definitely needs to take you off of your feet.
Absolutely.
It's funny. It's really been eye-opening the time that I spent, inside of professional wrestling and then watching it on television. It's almost kind of like I wish I had never even been involved in it, because now when I watch a match, I'm like, here it comes. And Michael knows what I'm talking about. Here it is.
Yes.
Hit no down. So it's kind of like, I already know what's going to happen. It awes me how are able to keep the crowd entertained and do a great job. But I don't know where I need to be, so I'm going to back off here and just listen and y'all know whenever you're ready.
Right on. Well, I mean, and that's something I did kind of want to get into a little bit about this is, has watching pro wrestling been on television been ruined for you?
Yes,
by
it has.
being associated.
Like I said, I could only make it through half of the very first match of AEW's broadcast, and I have not watched it since. I don't watch WWE anymore. I'm trying to think. I guess the last time I watched it would have been early 2019.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know what it is. It is not entertaining to me anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I mean, that's the thing, specifically with tag matches, I specifically try to watch tag matches now to see if people are going to go paint by numbers, as I call it, where, okay, here they go. They're going into the heat. Okay, here comes the hot tag. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. I like it when they kind of, yeah, exactly. I like it when they kind of go through and then they just throw that script out the window. And You're like, okay, here comes the finish. Oh wait, no, that wasn't the finish. What? It's crazy to me.
Right.
Like, I will say, go ahead.
Like I was saying, we're supposed to be mimicking a actual sport. So it should all look like you didn't know that was coming. And that goes to what I've trained these other people for. You know, there was a match that Troy Twain had, and there was a setup. It was a spot where he gave arm drag, um, a hip toss, and a clothesline, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave the arm drag, he gave the clothesline, or he gave the arm drag, the hip toss, and then the clothesline, and then he never looked back at his opponent because his opponent was supposed to powder out of the ring. And I pointed out to him, you never looked at your opponent because you knew he was going to leave. So you just told all of the fans that you knew what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And that right there kills the believability.
It's the little things, you know. That's actually
Yes.
really interesting. I never would have thought about that, but that's actually really interesting to me. You know, that's one thing though that I will say AEW is interesting for me for is their tag aspects. Their tag matches are definitely they're not formulaic, but at the same time, the problem there lies in that you can be too unformulaic, so you lose just absolutely everything that pro wrestling is supposed to be. So I kind of land on both sides of the fence on that one.
Yeah.
So I definitely. So any other thoughts as far as the current product as a whole, or any further thoughts on that?
Well, I had seen a question posted on Facebook. You know, if you could talk to Vince McMahon, what would you tell him needs to happen to WWE to bring it back? And that was my comment on that post. You know, treat it like it's wrestling.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, you look at what they're doing right now with the you look at what they are doing right now with the Thunderdome, and they're piping in crowd noise, and it's almost like the people he is employing, I won't say him because I'm not so sure how much of the day-to-day he deals with, but the people that he's employing are trying too hard, especially during this COVID time with no audience, to make it feel like a show with a packed crowd.
Right.
You know,
But even if we look at where it was before COVID, I mean, there's obviously a market for it.
absolutely.
They didn't get to be the number one promotion by not doing what they're doing. I mean, the fact that they're doing what they're doing and they are succeeding tells you there's a market for that. AEW has come up. So it tells you there is a market for that.
Mm-hmm.
Our small promotions around Arkansas that I've seen some of the same type of stuff. There is a market for that, and that is great. That is, I'm not trying to get people to only wrestle one style everywhere. That's not my purpose.
Right.
Nor do I want that job. But for South Central Wrestling, I have a dream of what I want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing saying that a person can't go and wrestle at one place and be this way, and then come to SCW and be this way. You can definitely wrestle both styles. I just want people to understand that South Central Wrestling is built to be a more sports-oriented promotion.
Well, and I mean, it's interesting you bring that up because but they constantly talk about when these indie guys are signed to WWE specifically, they get sent down to developmental to learn the WWE style. Even you look at a guy like AJ Styles, for example, he has toned down a lot of what made him AJ Styles in TNA and New Japan.
They cut out over half of his list of moves that he would go through.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at it, he'd hit like 20 Styles clashes in Japan and still not get the win. Like, that's the difference. Yeah. And we can kind of get into that a little bit too. What's your thoughts on finishers being kicked out nowadays and kind of willy nilly? Because back in the day, man, you hit the finisher and it was over. It was game, set, match. And now it's, we're just trying to get that. We're trying to get to that false finish.
Right, and that's. I kind of look at it as like the sixth sense. You are so focused on that turn, that swerve that you're trying to put on the crowd, that you mess up everything else that you set in motion. With the sixth sense, they talked about all the things that would happen when one of these spirits came to the little boy that could see them.
Mm-hmm.
Yet when Bruce Willis was there, you never seen any of that stuff happening. The air would get cold and you could see everybody's breath. But when Bruce Willis was talking to the boy, you never seen any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you lay out all this stuff. Look, this is how it's supposed to be. But then you intentionally take that stuff out to swerve the audience. It just messes it all up.
Another popular one amongst indie crowds is Working the Boys. What's your thoughts on that?
For workers' sake, it's ignorant, but at the end of the day, if you're not going through all your spots, you should be working the boys anyways, because they don't know what's going on.
Right. Good point.
So, I mean, if you're trying to pull a swerve over on them just for the sake of pulling a swerve over on them, that's just kind of stupid.
Mm-hmm. So we've talked about kayfabe on this podcast quite a bit, and how we're kind of breaking it. But I want your thoughts. Specifically, you mentioned we've talked quite a bit about AEW on this podcast. What do you think about the formula that they're following in today's society, where you don't only watch Dynamite on Wednesdays, you have to watch Being the Elite on Monday on YouTube and everything else to be able to keep in with the storylines? What's your thoughts on that kind of formula as far as, keeping your audience engaged? And really, with BTE, it's completely lack of kayfabe. So what's your thoughts on just blowing kayfabe up in AEW?
I honestly don't like it. I understand we're doing it on this show, but I'm having to do it in order to get over the points I'm trying to make.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason that it is supposed to look real, and if you constantly tell everybody it's not real, I don't see where you expect people to come back. Would the Infinity War stuff have been as good as it was if you were constantly seeing the cut, or they just went out there and told you all the time, how fake it is?
Absolutely. I mean, I would agree. You kind of broke up a little bit there, but I would agree with what you're saying. I think the difference between AEW and WWE right now, because WWE does try for the most part, to keep kayfabe, even though, they were the ones who blew the doors wide off of it. They tried.
Well, Vince McMahon blew the doors off of it because he didn't want to have to pay these athletic commission and taxes.
Right. And Vince McMahon was not a popular person in the 80s for that, by the way, especially in this area. Oh, right. Good Lord. People wanted to kill Vince McMahon for doing that. But, getting into it, it seems like people watch AEW and WWE for two different reasons. They watch AEW for the athleticism, and they watch WWE for the story, I think. And I think that's the main difference between the two. In AEW, you get the acrobatics and the high flying and all that. You watch more.
But when the entire show is acrobatics and high flying, how special was any of it?
Oh, I absolutely agree.
What was the last AEW match you watched, Michael?
Do what now?
What was the last AEW match you watched?
I just watched this last episode of Dynamite this past week. It was Moxley and I forget who the other guy was versus Kenny Omega and
What?
and
I mean, this is the last match you watched, and you can't even remember who was in it.
I want to say it was Lance Archer. I could be
That's
wrong.
the point I'm trying to make.
Right.
It has gotten to the point where we don't really pay attention to who it is or why they're doing it. We just, he did a flip. He came off the rope.
You're right.
That's the problem that I have with throwing it all in the same pot.
Absolutely. I would agree. And that's the thing, it's kind of funny. You talk about how you want pro wrestling to be more sports based, but it's funny to me because, and the reason why I'm laughing is literally that's what AEW said they would be with the rankings and keeping up with people's win-loss records.
Right.
You're right, though. It really is more.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out how you score, positive or negative. Was it Chris Jericho that went in orange juice?
Oh, yes.
Okay, where does that fall on the sports spectrum there?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, really, you make a good point there. You make a damn good point. I mean, Jericho, I'm actually Facebook friends with a guy over in Tennessee that gets a lot of crap from a lot of fans for being too old school in his mindset as well. Greg Anthony. And when I saw the Jericho versus MJF thing, now mind you, the Jericho MJF thing, the Bray Wyatt versus John Cena at this last WrestleMania, I watch those for what they are. They're entertainment. They're not necessarily pro wrestling, but they're entertainment. So I don't get offended when that happens, but man, Greg will rip them apart when he sees that on television. And I can kind of understand it. Part of me is like, dude, you're looking into it too hard. But I can understand, if you've dedicated your life to wrestling like Ric Flair or Harley Race, and, you want that 80s mentality because that's what you love, then, yeah, I can understand you being offended by the product that is currently presented on television.
Well, it hurts. It hurts other promotions as well. Whenever they see stuff like that on TV, when people see stuff like that on TV, and then come to a indie show expecting to see stuff like that and don't get it, it definitely hurts the product.
Absolutely. I can agree with that for sure. And that's the thing. I don't know whether it's because it's supposed to appeal to a broader audience, the reason why entertainment has been brought into pro wrestling as much as what it has. Vince McMahon doesn't allow the word wrestling anymore. From a lot of people say he calls his pro wrestlers sports entertainers. He will never call them wrestlers, So, I mean, there's definitely a counterculture that is developing between the steadfast people that are on the side of tradition, and then the people that are sports entertainment, and this is what wrestling has evolved to be. Which, I mean, I'm kind of the aspect, yes, everything evolves, and it's not. I like I said, I watched the MJF and Jericho thing and the Bray Wyatt and John Cena thing for what it was. I don't watch. I don't
slow
watch.
You down right there when you talk about everything evolves. Hockey has changed how much? Basketball has changed how much?
True.
Football has changed how much? I mean, other than
you change the rules, I guess. Boxing.
Right. Other than safety standards, I think the last big thing that changed in football was the addition of the replay.
Right.
The last big thing that changed in basketball was where they call fouls now. Mark Cuban really pushed on that. And if it's a foul down in the key, why is it not a foul when it happens at the top of the key.
Right.
So I think that was the last big change in basketball. I can't think of any changes that have happened in baseball.
But I mean, I guess you could argue that, the way Jordan played and the way Magic played and stuff like that, brought a more entertaining version of basketball than what happened before they came in.
Right, but the rules of the sport were still the same.
True.
So why are the rules of the sport not still the same when you look at wrestling?
Good point.
I mean, in AEW, yeah, you talk about wanting to watch tag matches, but from what I've heard, and I'm saying from what I heard, because like I said, I hadn't really watched AEW, but from what I hear, there's no real consequences for everybody being in the ring.
Oh,
All four men will be in the ring. The referee's not trying to get anybody out. He's just kind of letting it go. And that goes to singles matches. When you have a wrestler in there that will just go up and choke somebody out in front of the referee while the referee's counting, how stupid does it look?
We kind of got into this the other day, and you make a good point. Like I said, I kind of understand from the heel aspect, you're breaking on the count of 4, you're kind of rubbing it in that, hey, I got till the count of 4, so I'm going to run it to it. But I see your point too, because you brought up boxing, and you said, what happens in boxing when you commit a foul? You get one warning, and then you're disqualified.
Disqualified or points taken, but you're definitely warned about it. The action is stopped. Nowadays, you can sit there and choke somebody in the corner, and the referee's just going to sit there counting, and you turn and say, "Oh, I've got 4 seconds, or I've got 5 seconds. I got till the count of 5 to break it." Well, that's the dumbest thing you can tell anybody. What other sport do you know that you can basically tell the referee, "I can cheat up to this point," and you can't do anything about it?
I mean, and really, that speaks to how refereeing has changed. Back in the day, refereeing, you were the general. You listened to the referee just like any other sport. Nowadays, you have to. You do see a lot of it. You mentioned the tag matches where there's no consequences. JR, I've heard him on the podcast, and I mean, he has a point. Why aren't you automatically counting whenever they're counting to 5? Just like if they were cheating whenever there's a tag to get the other guy out. Why aren't, one of his big things that I never noticed until I was in pro wrestling was the tag rope. He said, why do we even have a tag rope anymore? Nobody uses it.
Right.
Good point.
Right.
It's a good point.
One of the things I was looking at during the Super Bowl was the Chiefs got called a lot for holding.
Right.
So it's something that happens even though it's an infraction. But they're not doing it in front of the referee so the referee will call it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And
I don't understand why people think that in wrestling you can commit an infraction right in front of the official and it's supposed to be okay.
Absolutely.
That goes to the killing of the business. That goes back to making everyone. You can't suspend the disbelief when you put it that blatant in front of everybody.
That's a good point. It's a daggum good point. Well, Antonio, I know you're kind of on the road here, and I know we have some technical difficulties with Aaron. I think we were talking about having you back at some point so that he can join us. But definitely, I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I had a lot of fun. Guys, definitely feel free to comment. I'm sure Antonio will be checking the comments on the Facebook posts and everything, or I'll let him know if you guys have questions. Feel free to keep commenting your questions and we'll try to get them answered. But definitely want to tell you, I hope you have a safe travels and good luck.
Yes, sir. I just want to tell everybody that you can catch our other events, our past events on YouTube. It'll be under SCW Arkansas. You can check out our Facebook page, South Central Wrestling. You can check out our website, southcentralwrestling.com. And I think That's about it.
Plug the event, Antonio.
Yes, sir. Well, it'll be March 27th also. We run the fourth Saturday of the month, February 27th, 199 3rd Avenue in Mountain Pine, Arkansas. We will start at 7 o'clock. Doors open at 6:30. We will have 5 great matches lined up, and the Light X-Ray will be in the house taking on yours truly, the Aztec Warrior. For those of y'all that want to come and see a little bit of Mexican wrestling. Doing our best, man. We're just trying to pump out a good product.
That reminds me of back in the day when Shawn Michaels was challenging Bret Hart, and he said, "You do all that Mexican wrestling. You jump around like a Mexican jumping bean." Oh man, that's good times. Good times back in the 90s when you could be an asshole and get away with it before cancel culture. Oh, well, Antonio, once again, I do want to say I hope you stay safe out there. Good luck on your show tonight, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
That was Mr. Antonio Reyes. Definitely want to take the time to say thank you for him coming on and taking the time out of his drive to come on and speak with us. Next week, we have the top 10 breakout stars in the state of Arkansas. We're going to rank the top 10 stars here in the state of Arkansas. Myself and Aaron came up with this list, and we will give it to you next week here on the show. So definitely looking forward to doing that. Stay tuned. Next up for us here on Podcast Network 49 will be the American Idiots Show Monday night at 8 p.m. where you can see Antonio as the Manic Hispanic live on the air with us, debating politics and everything. So definitely keep your eye out for that. But for my broadcast colleague, Mr. Aaron, as well as Antonio and Brad, this has been the Wrestling Wrap-Up, and I certainly hope you guys have a wonderful weekend.
Do I have everybody's attention now?